There are decisions in life you make without knowing they'll change everything. The day I tore up that paper with his phone numbers, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and caught the first bus out of town was one of those moments. My name is Lucas, 24 years old, and I was running away. Running from someone who chose the safety of a lie over the risk of a truth. Running from myself, maybe. The bus station in the rural countryside smelled of diesel, road dust, and reheated coffee. It was one of those places where time seems to move slower, where nobody's in a hurry because there isn't anywhere better to go anyway. I was leaning against a pillar, staring at the bulletin boards full of faded ads, when I saw that paper. Handwritten, in firm but uneven script, like it had been written by rough hands that didn't hold a pen often. Farm workers needed, harvest season, weekly pay, phone, Raphael. Something about that simplicity grabbed me. Maybe it was the fact it was so direct, no frills. Or maybe it was the promise of a place where no one knew me, where I could be just another pair of hands working under the sun. I wrote down the number and called from a payphone. The voice that answered was deep, tired, but not unkind. Hello. I'm calling about the ad, the farm job. There was a pause, a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of weeks of sleepless nights. Do you have experience with cattle, with crops? I could have lied. I probably should have. But something in that voice made me want to be honest. None. But I learn fast, and I need the work. Another pause. Longer this time. All right. Tomorrow, 7 in the morning, at the bus station. White pickup, Minas plates. Don't be late. And he hung up. Just like that. No elaborate interview, no questions about references. It was as if he was as desperate as I was, each of us running from different ghosts. The next morning, I was up before my alarm. My stomach twisted with nerves mixed with something like hope. Hope for what? I wasn't exactly sure. Maybe that the physical pain of farm work would be easier to bear than the pain I was leaving behind. Someone who chose the safety of a straight marriage instead of risking being who he really was with me. The white pickup showed up promptly at 7. It was old, all dusty, with dents that told stories of years on dirt roads. The passenger door opened and I saw him for the first time. Raphael had that presence that fills a space without needing words. Tall, maybe about 6'1". Broad shoulders that strained a faded plaid shirt. His skin was sun-browned and weathered, with lines around his eyes that could be from laughing or from squinting against the bright days in the fields. A neatly kept salt and pepper beard, dark hair with silver at the temples. His hands on the wheel were big, with visible calluses even from a distance, hands of someone who works the land, with tools, with real life. But it was his eyes that made me pause for a second before climbing into the truck. Green, deep, carrying a kind of weariness that didn't come only from physical labor. It was the weariness of someone who carries inner burdens, who knows true loneliness. Lucas? The voice was the same as on the phone, but in person it had more texture. Husky, as if he hadn't been talking much lately. Yes, sir. I tossed my backpack in the bed and climbed up. Just Raphael is fine. He didn't say anything else. He put the truck in gear, and we left the town. I tried to make conversation a few times. I asked about the farm, what kind of work it would be, how long it would take to get there. He answered in monosyllables, polite but clearly not interested in small talk. After a while, I gave up and looked out the window. The scenery changed gradually. The small town gave way to open fields, gentle hills covered in grass, barbed wire fences stretching as far as the eye could see. The sky was enormous, a blue so intense it almost hurt your eyes, so different from the narrow streets and gray buildings of the city I came from. 40 minutes on a dirt road later, we passed through a makeshift gate with a wooden sign, Santos Farm. The property was vast. Pastures stretched in every direction, dotted with cattle that lazily lifted their heads as we passed. In the distance, cornfields swayed in the wind. And at the center of it all, a simple brick farmhouse with a wide porch and 3 or 4 rooms as far as I could tell. Raphael parked near the house and pointed to a smaller building about 50 yards away. That's your cabin. There's a bed, a basic bathroom, a little stove. Nothing luxurious, but it works. I looked at the little house. It really was simple, almost rustic, but it had an honest feel to it. A place of my own, even if temporary. "And the main house?" I asked, more out of politeness than curiosity. "That's mine. You eat your meals, I eat mine. I'll leave a packed lunch for you in the morning. Unless I call you to eat together, everyone keeps to their corner." Straightforward, clear. The message was obvious. There's a line between boss and worker, and it shouldn't be crossed. I understood perfectly. It was exactly the kind of distance I needed anyway. The first few days were brutal. My city gym body wasn't built for real farm work. Waking up before dawn, feeding the cattle, fixing fences, hauling sacks of feed, cleaning the pen. Every muscle in my body screamed at the end of the day. My hands, which had only known the weight of dumbbells and bars in a climate-controlled gym, quickly developed blisters and calluses. Raphael watched my effort with a neutral expression. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't exactly kind either. He gave clear instructions, expected me to follow them, corrected me when I made mistakes. There was no judgment in his voice, just professional patience, as if he'd decided it wasn't worth investing emotional energy in me, since I was temporary anyway. And through all of it, we ate separately. Me in my cabin, him in his house. Sometimes I'd see the kitchen light on through the window at night, his silhouette sitting alone at the table. There was something deeply lonely about that image, but I remembered the line he'd drawn on the first day and I didn't interfere. It wasn't my business. Until on the 5th night, he knocked on my cabin door. I had just gotten out of the shower, hair still wet, when I heard the knocking. I opened the door and there was Raphael, holding a steaming pot. "I made too much stew. No point in wasting it." He didn't look me in the eyes when he spoke, as if he were justifying himself to himself, not to me. "Ah, right. Thanks. You can eat at my place. There's a bigger table, more comfortable." It was like that, without ceremony, that I found myself sitting at the main house's dining table for the first time. The interior of the house was Spartan. Simple, functional furniture, few decorations. But it was clean, organized. A place where someone lived, not just existed. At first, we ate in silence. The kind of heavy silence that only happens when two people are actively trying not to talk. I focused on the stew, which was surprisingly good, and he stared at some fixed point on the wall. But then I made a mistake. I reached for the salt shaker that was too far away, leaned too much, and almost knocked over my glass of water. I caught it at the last second, but the water sloshed dangerously and I let out a nervous laugh. "Sorry. I'm still not totally used to having coordination after a day's work." And for the first time since we'd met, Raphael smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was genuine. The lines around his eyes deepened, and for a brief moment, the sadness he carried seemed lighter. Big cities do that to you. We forget how the body really works. "You're from a big city?" He shook his head. "I grew up here, but my wife was from the city. She always used to say I didn't know how to use a fork and knife properly in a fancy restaurant." Wife. Past. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. "She doesn't live here anymore?" I asked, cautious. "She's dead. 2 years. Shit. I didn't know what to say. Every condolence line that came to mind sounded hollow, insufficient. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, but the gesture was tense. "That's why I need help on the farm. Before we split the tasks. Now, it's too much for one person." So that was it. The despair I'd heard in his voice on the phone. The loneliness I saw in his silhouette at night. Raphael wasn't just looking for a worker. He was trying to survive, to keep standing something that had been built for two. Suddenly, my pain felt small. I was running from someone who chose not to love me. Raphael was living every day with the absence of someone he loved and who had no choice but to leave. "I'll help with whatever you need," I said. And this time my words weren't just about the work. something changed on his face. His brows drew together a little, as if he were seeing me for the first time. Really seeing me. For a second, our eyes met properly, and I felt something I couldn't name. It wasn't attraction, not yet, at least not consciously. It was recognition. Like when two people carrying similar burdens look at each other and understand, without words, that they're not alone in the weight. The moment passed. Raphael cleared his throat and turned his attention back to his plate. Tomorrow, there's a lot of work. We need to fix the fence on the north pasture. We returned to professionalism, but something had cracked in the wall he'd built. It was a tiny crack, almost imperceptible, but it was there. After that night, shared dinners became more frequent. Not every night, but a few times a week Raphael showed up with extra food, or called me to help with something in the main house kitchen. Conversations were still short, mostly limited to practical matters. But every now and then, between tasks, I'd catch him watching me. It wasn't an obvious look. It was subtle. When I was fixing a fence and he pretended to check the boards beside me. When I carried hay and he adjusted his cap, but his eyes were on me. When we finished washing the tools in the afternoon and he took an extra second longer than necessary before turning his back. At first, I thought I was imagining it. After all, I'd come here precisely to escape that kind of thinking, that dangerous hope that had only hurt me before. But little by little, the looks became too frequent to be an accident. And the worst part, I started to reciprocate. When he took off his shirt to work under the blazing sun, revealing a body still strong despite his age, marked by scars that told stories of decades of hard work. When he laughed that rare way, head thrown back and his rough voice cracking a little. When he grew serious fixing something, brow furrowed in concentration. I caught myself watching, and I hated myself for it, because Raphael had made it clear from day one that there was a line. He was my boss, I was a temporary employee. He had loved someone deeply and lost that person tragically. And me? I was just a guy running from urban ghosts, someone passing through. But the heart doesn't understand logic. And the more time I spent there, working side by side with him, sharing occasional meals, existing in that isolated space where only the two of us and the cattle and the huge sky mattered, the harder it became to ignore what was growing inside me. And worse, the harder it became to ignore that maybe, just maybe, something was growing inside him too. On the 12th night, after an especially quiet dinner, where the unspoken tension between us seemed to fill the air like humidity before a storm, Raphael walked me out to the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky with ridiculous oranges and pinks. It was beautiful in a way that hurt. That kind of beauty that makes you feel small and at the same time part of something bigger. "You've adapted well," he said, breaking the silence. He wasn't looking at me, but at the horizon. "I thought you wouldn't last a week." "I thought the same." I gave a crooked smile. But I found out physical pain is easier to endure than other kinds of pain. He finally turned his face toward me. Those green eyes studied me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. "What kind of pain are you running from, Lucas?" The question caught me off guard. No one had asked me that directly. Not my family, not friends, no one. "Someone who chose safety over me," I answered, honesty slipping out before I could filter it. "Someone who preferred to lie their whole life rather than risk being true with me." Raphael nodded slowly, as if that made sense to him in some way. "I understand." And from the way he said it, I knew he really did understand. Not the specific details, maybe, but the essence of it. The pain of being the second choice. The pain of not being enough for someone to take a risk. The sun finished setting. Darkness started to swallow the pastures, leaving only a star-filled sky in a way no city can show. We stayed there on the porch, two men carrying different but equally real burdens. And for the first time since I'd arrived, I didn't feel alone in my pain. When I finally turned to go down the steps and back to my cabin, I felt his eyes on me. I looked back and caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't completely decipher. There was sadness there, yes. But there was something else. Something that felt dangerously close to desire, mixed with fear. He looked away quickly, as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. I walked back to the cabin in the dark, my heart beating faster than it should. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself I was projecting, seeing what I wanted to see because I was vulnerable and alone. I told myself that look had been just tiredness, or dim light, or my imagination. I told myself all of that. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Something was happening on that isolated farm, something neither of us was prepared to confront. An attraction that made no sense, that violated the lines Raphael had drawn, that threatened the fragile balance we'd both found in that place. And the scariest part, I didn't know if I wanted to fight it or surrender to it completely. As I lay on the narrow bed in that cabin, listening to the distant sound of cattle and crickets, a truth crystallized in my mind with terrifying clarity. I had come to this farm running from one pain, but I was beginning to suspect that maybe I'd run straight into another, of a completely different kind. A pain made of unsaid possibilities, of looks that lasted 1 second too long, of lines we both drew and both wanted to cross but didn't have the courage to. I told myself it meant nothing. I was wrong. I was wrong, yes, completely wrong. Because that look during the sunset wasn't an isolated moment. It was the first of many. And in the days that followed, I began to notice a pattern my brain desperately tried to rationalize as coincidence. Raphael watched me. Not obviously, not with those awkward stares that make you uncomfortable. It was something more subtle, more dangerous. It was those extra seconds when I lifted a bag of feed, when I fixed the fence under the noon sun, when I washed my hands at the trough. I felt the weight of his gaze on the back of my neck as if it were physical. And the worst part was that I liked it. God, how I liked it. The farm routine began to create a kind of quiet rhythm between us. We woke with the sun. He knocked on the cabin door around 5:30, always with the same rough shout. "Lucas, the cattle don't feed themselves," I answered with a grumble. Got dressed quickly and headed to the corral where he was already preparing the feed. We worked side by side. Little conversation. Just the sound of the cows, the wind in the eucalyptus, our boots on the dry earth. But there was a choreography to it. He handed me the shovel, I held the gate. I carried the bucket, he opened the way. Small, coordinated gestures that didn't need words. During the day, the heat fell over the farm like a curse. Sweat ran down my back, sticking my shirt to my skin. Raphael took his shirt off around 10 in the morning, and I had to force myself not to look. His body wasn't from the gym. It was sculpted by years of hard work. Functional muscles marked by small scars, by unevenly bronzed skin. There was something brutally honest about that body. Nothing performative. Just real. Have you ever questioned your sexuality? That question didn't come out of Raphael's mouth. At least not yet. But it echoed in my head every time I caught myself staring for too long. Every time my stomach tightened when he smiled that crooked way, eyes squinting against the sun. I had come to this farm running away from exactly this kind of feeling. And there I was, sinking into it again. Things really started to change in the 3rd week. That's when Raphael began inviting me to dinner on the main house porch. Until then, I ate alone in the cabin. He'd leave a covered plate by my door every night. Simple, plentiful food. Rice, beans, stewed meat, farofa, but always alone. Until one night he showed up at the door and said, bluntly, "Tonight you'll eat at my place. Bring a chair." It wasn't an invitation, it was an instruction. I obeyed. His porch was wide, with a direct view of the pastures stretching to the horizon. You could see the whole sky from there. No light pollution, no buildings, just stars. Millions of them. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. The kind of heavy silence, full of unsaid things. But then he started to talk. "You're from the big city, right?" "Yes, a major city." He chewed slowly, thoughtful. Never been to anywhere like that. Too many people, I imagine. A lot. Too many, sometimes. Why did you leave? The question came so directly I almost choked on my beans. I needed time away. From things. From people. Raphael nodded, as if he understood perfectly. He didn't press, but his look said he knew there was more. Much more. Take it slow, he said suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. No rush, no pressure. I didn't know whether he was talking about the conversation or something else, but something in his voice calmed me. In the following days, the porch dinners became routine, and with them, the questions grew more personal. Do you have family in São Paulo? I do. My parents, a sister. Do you miss them? Sometimes, but not enough to go back. He smiled slightly. I get that feeling. That's when he began to talk about his wife. Not much. Never long or dramatic conversations. Just fragments. She liked to plant flowers here, he said one night, pointing to an abandoned flower bed near the porch. Roses. Said they made the house less rough. You didn't keep them. He shook his head slowly. I can't look at them without remembering. So I let them die. There was a raw pain in those words, but also something that felt almost like permission. As if he were telling himself it was okay to let go. I wanted to ask how she had died, but I didn't have the courage. The strangest change happened during work. Before, Raphael kept a functional distance. He handed me tools without touching my hand. He stood about a meter away when we were fixing something together. But after the dinners started, that distance shrank. One day we were replacing a rotten board on a fence. I was holding the wood in place while Raphael screwed it in. He was so close I could feel the heat of his body, hear his breathing, the smell of sweat mixed with earth, and something that was just his. My hand slipped. The board tilted dangerously. Raphael reacted quickly, placing his hand over mine to steady the board. And then, nothing. He didn't pull his hand away. I didn't pull mine. We stayed like that. 3 seconds, maybe 4, a microscopic eternity where the entire world seemed contained in that point of contact between his calloused palm and my trembling fingers. I could feel my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. Can you hold it? He asked, his voice lower than usual. I can. He eased his hand away slowly. We finished the job in absolute silence, but something had changed. Something had been acknowledged, even if neither of us had the courage to say what. Have you ever pretended so much you almost believed your own lie? I was doing that. Pretending that touch meant nothing. That the dinners were just kindness. That the looks were mere coincidence. But at night, alone in the cabin, I could no longer fool myself. 3 days after the fence incident, something broke. I'd finished early that day. Raphael had gone into town to take care of something at the bank, so I stayed to tend the cattle alone. Around 6 in the evening, I finished everything and went back to the cabin to shower. When I came out, I saw a light on in the main house. He was back. I hesitated. Usually I waited for him to call me, but something pushed me to walk over there. The front door was ajar. I knocked lightly. Raphael? No answer. I entered slowly. The house was simple inside. Few pieces of furniture, nothing decorative, functional. The kitchen was immediately on the left, the living room to the right, with an old sofa and a small TV that probably never turned on. And it was at the kitchen table that I saw him. Raphael was sitting, hunched over himself. In his fingers, a framed photo. Even from afar, I recognized the picture. His wife. Smiling, in a white dress, beside him at some event. A wedding, maybe. Or a birthday. And he was crying. It wasn't loud sobbing. Just silent tears. The kind that slide down without warning. The ones you don't even try to hold back because you've already given up fighting them. I should have left. I should have turned around and left that moment to him, but I couldn't. "Raphael," I whispered. He jerked his head up. Red eyes, the expression of someone caught at their most vulnerable. "Sorry, I didn't know you were—" He wiped his face with the back of his hand, quick, almost angrily. "It's okay, sometimes it still hits, you know? I understand." "No, you don't understand." The harshness in his voice hit me like a slap. But then he sighed, tired. "Sorry. I didn't mean... It's not about you. I know." I sat in the chair beside him, slowly, without asking. He didn't send me away. We stayed there in silence. He still held the photo. I looked at my own hands. "She died 2 years ago," Raphael said suddenly. "Aneurysm, out of nowhere. She was fine in the morning. By the afternoon, she was gone. I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry. But no one understands what it's like to wake up every day in a house that feels like a tomb. To work alone, eat alone, sleep alone, until you forget what it actually feels like to be alive." He looked at me then, and in that look was something so raw, so desperate, my chest ached. "You remind me that I'm still here, Lucas." I didn't know what to say. He put the photo back on the table, face down. "Sorry for making you see this. You don't have to apologize." He nodded, but said nothing more. I stood to leave. But before I walked out, he said, "Lucas." "Yes. Thank you for not leaving." That night, lying in the cabin bed, I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. Rafael Santos wasn't just my employer. He wasn't just a lonely man trying to run a farm too big for one person. He was clinging to me like the only thing that still made sense. And me? I was falling for him. I'm afraid, but I'm sure. Afraid of what? Of discovering something about myself that changes everything in my life. Again, because I'd been through this before. I'd felt that pang in my chest, that need to be near someone, that insane desire to matter to another person, and it had gone wrong. But here, on this farm lost in the Minas countryside, with a man 14 years older who still cried for his dead wife, something in me insisted on believing that maybe, just maybe, it could be different, even knowing I was probably setting myself up for another fall. The following weeks were a sweet torture. Dinners continued. Conversations grew longer. Raphael began to laugh more, small laughs, nothing loud, but each one felt like a victory. He started touching me more often, nothing invasive, just present. A hand on my shoulder when he passed behind me, a touch on the arm to get my attention, fingers brushing mine when he reached for something I was holding. Each touch burned, and I began to notice that he noticed. Because he always paused afterward, as if testing, waiting to see if I'd pull away. I never pulled away. "Let's see each other again. Keep in touch." Those words hadn't been spoken yet, but they hung in the air between us. The silent promise that whatever this was wouldn't simply disappear when the harvest ended and my contract expired. But before any promise could be voiced, fate decided to interfere. It was on an unrelenting sunny afternoon. We were sorting the cattle for vaccination. Hard, noisy work. The cows were agitated. One of them, a large, nervous heifer, started pushing the metal gate of the pen. Raphael shouted for me to step back, but he was too close. The gate gave way. 200 pounds of metal fell on him. I heard the scream before I saw it. A sound I'll never forget. Pure, animal pain. I ran. When I got there, he was on the ground, the gate over his left leg, blood beginning to spread across the dry dirt. His eyes found mine, and in those eyes was fear, real fear. "Lucas." He tried to speak, but the voice came out weak. "Stay still. I'm going to get you out." My heart was pounding so fast my ears were ringing. My hands trembled, but something inside me took control. The ambulance would take an hour. and I had minutes to decide if I could save him by myself. My mind went into survival mode. That strange state where panic steps aside and some more primitive version of you takes command. I assessed the situation in seconds. The gate weighed more than 100 kilos. I couldn't lift it alone without hurting Raphael even more. But if I did nothing, his leg would keep being crushed and the blood would keep flowing. "Raphael, look at me. Look at me." He obeyed. The green eyes were glazed with pain, but he stared at me. "I'm going to lift the gate. It's going to hurt. A lot. But I need you to stay conscious, understood? Don't pass out. Stay with me." He nodded, jaw clenched. I took a deep breath. I grabbed the gate by the side, searching for a point of leverage. I used every ounce of strength in my legs, back, and arms, gym muscles that had never been tested like this. The gate gave. About 30 centimeters. "Now, Raphael, pull your leg, now," he shouted as he dragged his body backward, but he managed to free himself. I let go of the gate immediately, and he fell back onto the ground with a metallic thud. I dropped to my knees beside him. The leg was destroyed, bone exposed, too much blood. I needed to stop the bleeding. I took off my shirt, tore it into a wide strip and tied it above the wound, tightening hard. Raphael groaned, but didn't scream. He was going into shock, his skin turning pale, lips purple. "Raphael, stay with me. Stay with me." He murmured something I couldn't make out. I grabbed my phone. Damn weak signal. 2 bars. I called the ambulance. I explained the situation with the steadier voice I could fake. They said an ambulance was coming, but it would take at least 50 minutes. The farm was too far. 50 minutes. He didn't have 50 minutes. "All right," I told the operator. "I'm going to take him." Raphael's pickup was parked near the barn, keys in the ignition, always. I had never driven a pickup, barely drove in São Paulo, but there was no choice. "Raphael, I'm going to carry you to the truck. This is going to hurt, a lot." "I'm sorry." He nodded weakly. I slid my arms under him and lifted. He was heavy, farmer's body, solid muscle. But adrenaline gave me strength. I walked fast to the pickup, each step agony for him. I laid Raphael down in the back seat, grabbed an old tarp from the trunk and covered his leg to avoid looking at the wound. Not because I was disgusted, but because if I looked too long, I'd panic. I climbed into the driver's seat, hands shaking, started the truck. The engine growled. I hit the gas. The dirt road was hell. Potholes, rocks, tight turns. Every jolt wrung a moan out of Raphael. I checked the rear view every 10 seconds, praying he wouldn't pass out. "Stay with me, Raphael. Stay with me." My voice was a mantra. For him. For me. The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered on speaker. "This is the ambulance. We managed to dispatch a closer unit. They'll meet you on the main road. Thank you. Thank you." I sped up. It was the longest drive of my life. 30 minutes that felt like hours. The sun was beginning to sink on the horizon, staining everything orange and red. Blood in the sky. I hadn't prayed in years. But on that dirt road, with Raphael bleeding in the back, I prayed. To God, to saints whose names I didn't even know, to the universe, to anything that might be listening. Don't take him from me, please, not now. And only when I thought that did I realize the naked, brutal truth. He wasn't just my employer. He wasn't just someone I was attracted to. I was in love, lost, hopelessly in love, and he could die before I ever had the courage to say it. The ambulance met us 20 minutes later, flashing lights on the empty road. 2 paramedics jumped out. I stopped the pickup and ran out. He's in the back seat. Crushed leg. I made a tourniquet. He was conscious, but now he's not responding. They moved fast, professional. They pulled Raphael from the truck, put him on a stretcher, started checking vitals. One of them looked at me. "Are you family?" I hesitated. Family. The word hit me like a punch. I'm his employee, but I'm the only person he has. The paramedic nodded. You can ride in the ambulance. I got in, sat on a small seat beside the stretcher. Raphael was unconscious now. Machines beeping, IV, oxygen masks. Everything very fast, very technical. I held his hand. No one stopped me. You're going to be okay, I whispered. You have to be. The ride to the hospital was a blur. Sirens, turns, voices saying medical terms I didn't understand. Hemorrhage, low blood pressure, severe trauma. When we arrived, they took him straight to the emergency room. I tried to follow, but a nurse held me back. Only family in the operating room. I'm not family, but he has no one else. She looked at me with pity. You'll have to wait out here. She led me to a waiting room. Small, uncomfortable plastic chairs, the smell of disinfectant, a TV tuned to a news channel nobody watched. I sat, and then, finally, I broke down. I cried. There, alone in that cold room, I cried like I hadn't since I left Sao Paulo. I cried out of fear, exhaustion, despair. I cried because I didn't know if I'd see him alive again. The hours crawled, so slowly. Nurses came and went. I asked. They said they didn't know, that the doctor would speak with me as soon as there was news. I bought a bad coffee from the hallway machine. I didn't drink it. I just held the plastic cup to have something warm in my hands. I called the farm. No answer, of course. There was no one there besides the two of us. I thought about calling my parents. But what would I say? That the man I had fallen in love with was dying and I had no right to be there? So I stayed, waiting. It was around 11 at night when the doctor came. A man in his 50s, coat stained with blood. He looked tired. Are you a relative of Mr. Rafael Santos? No, I work for him. He hesitated. He doesn't have family? No. His wife died. No children. I'm the closest person he has. The doctor sighed. All right. He had severe trauma to his left leg, an open fracture, significant hemorrhaging. We managed to stabilize him, but he lost a lot of blood. During the surgery, his heart stopped. I felt the world collapse. But we managed to resuscitate him. He's alive, stable, but still sedated. He'll be under observation for the next few hours. Can I see him? You can. But only for a few minutes. He led me down a white corridor, doors, more doors, into a small ICU room. And there was Raphael, lying in a hospital bed. Tubes, wires, monitors. His left leg bandaged, suspended. His face too pale, but he was breathing. Alive. I approached slowly, as if any sudden movement might break him. I sat in the chair beside the bed, took his hand again. This time no one was taking me away. You made it, I whispered. You're alive. Thank God you're alive. And then, as if my body finally understood it was safe to let go, I started to tremble. Trembling so hard my teeth were chattering. A nurse came in, saw my state, and brought a blanket. Wrapped it around me without saying anything. Just a small gesture of humanity on a day that had been far too inhuman. Thank you, I said. She gave a slight smile and left. I stayed there all night. Nobody sent me away. Maybe because they realized I wasn't going anywhere. I watched him, his chest rising and falling, the monitor recording every heartbeat. And I realized I was praying again. Thank you. Thank you for not taking him from me. It must have been around 3 in the morning when I felt his hand move. I snapped awake. I had dozed off without noticing. Raphael? I called softly. His eyes opened slowly, disoriented, confused. He looked around, at the machines, at the ceiling, at me. Lucas? The voice came out hoarse, weak, but it was him. I'm here. You're in the hospital. You had an accident. but everything's okay now. You're alive. He blinked several times, trying to process. The leg. Broken. But the doctors said it will be okay. It'll take time, but it will be okay. He looked at his hand. Realized I was holding it. And then, something shifted in his gaze. You brought me? I did. I wasn't going to let you die out on that farm. He squeezed my hand, weak but deliberate. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I do. He stopped, closed his eyes, took a deep breath. I saw her, Lucas. What? My wife. When my heart stopped, I saw her. I froze. You saw her? I did. I can't explain it. But she was there, smiling. And she said something. What? He looked me in the eyes, and there was something different there. Something that hadn't been there before. She said I'm wasting my time, that she's gone already, and that she gives me permission to be happy again. My chest tightened. Raphael. She told me to stop feeling guilty, to stop clutching onto the past. She said. He took a deep breath. She said I deserve to truly live, not just exist. I didn't know what to say. He smiled. Weak, but genuine. I guess I needed to hear that. I think so. He squeezed my hand again. You stayed here all night? I did. Why? Because I had nowhere else to be. Lie. I had other places. But none of them mattered if he wasn't there. Raphael looked at me for a long moment, as if reading something written on my face. Something I still didn't have the courage to say out loud. Thank you, Lucas, for everything. You're welcome. He closed his eyes again, fatigue pulling him back to sleep. I stayed there, holding his hand until he fell asleep, and when he finally relaxed completely, I rested my head on the edge of the bed and let sleep overtake me too. For the first time in weeks, I slept without fear, because he was alive, and now I was certain. It didn't matter what happened next. It didn't matter if he didn't feel the same. It didn't matter if my heart got broken again. I loved that man. And almost losing him had taught me that hiding it was the biggest mistake I could make. The next morning, the doctor came on rounds. Raphael was awake, lucid, answering questions. The leg would need corrective surgery, but the worst had passed. You were lucky, the doctor said. If not for how quickly you're... He looked at me. Friend, you wouldn't be here. Raphael looked at me. He saved my life. I just did what needed to be done. No. You did much more than that. The doctor cleared him to go home that late afternoon. Raphael would need crutches, physical therapy, follow-up. But he could go home. I drove the pickup back to the farm, slowly this time. Raphael in the passenger seat, his leg bandaged and stretched out, resting on the dash. We were silent. But it was a different kind of silence, heavy with things left unsaid. When we arrived, I helped him down, supported his body while he hobbled to the porch. You should rest. I will. But first. He stopped at the door, turned to me. Lucas, about what I said at the hospital. About your wife? Yes. I think it was real. I can't explain it. But something changed. I believe you. He smiled. Thank you. He went inside slowly, leaning on the crutches. I was going to go back to the cabin, but he called me. Lucas. Yes? Stay a little longer, please. So I stayed. We sat on the porch, him in his usual chair, me in mine. The sun sinking on the horizon, the cicadas starting their chorus. And when I looked into the house through the open window, I noticed something. The photo of his wife, the one that always sat on the kitchen table, wasn't there anymore. Raphael followed my gaze. I kept it, he said simply. Not because I don't love her anymore, but because I need to stop living as if she's still here. Are you sure? I am. She gave me permission. Now I just need the courage to accept it. He looked at me then, And in that look, there was something new, something dangerous, something that made my heart race. Something had changed, and there was no going back. Thank you for staying with me, Lucas. At the hospital. Here. In everything. Always. And when I said that, I realized it was true. I was going to stay, no matter what came. Because true love, the kind that almost makes you die of fear, is exactly the kind you can't let go of, even when you should. In the 3 days that followed, I learned that transformation isn't a metaphor. It's a real thing. Something you can see happening right before your eyes. Raphael didn't come back from the hospital the same man who left here. He came back like someone who had seen the other side, and had decided he wasn't going to waste time pretending anymore. On his first day back, I was fixing the fence on the east pasture. The sun was already high, that kind of heat that makes the air shimmer above the ground. I was hammering a post when I heard his truck approaching. He climbed down slowly, still careful because of his bruised ribs. But the way he looked at me wasn't careful at all. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Alive," he answered. And for the first time in years, I know exactly what that means. He stood there watching me work. Not from a distance, not sidelong. He just stood there watching. No apologies, no looking away when I noticed. "Do you need anything?" I asked, trying to ignore the way my heart had jumped. "No, I just wanted to see you." And he said it like he was making small talk about the weather. Natural, direct. As if it wasn't the most disconcerting thing anyone had ever said to me. I didn't know what to do with it. So I went back to hammering. But my hands were shaking. That night, he showed up at my cabin door for the first time since the accident. "I was thinking," he said, leaning in the frame. "We always have dinner separate. Me in the house, you here. Doesn't make much sense, does it?" "It's always been that way," I replied. "Yeah. But it doesn't have to stay that way." He waited, giving me time to understand what he was proposing. "Come have dinner with me tonight, on the porch. It's cool out then, and it'd be nice to have company." "Real company," he added. I could have said no. Could have kept the distance we'd so carefully built in those first weeks. That invisible line between boss and worker, between the man who pays and the man who works. But something in his voice told me that line didn't exist anymore. And if I said no now, I wouldn't be protecting anything. I'd just be afraid. "All right," I said. And the smile that came across his face was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in months. The main house's porch looked out over the pasture where the cattle rested at dusk. Raphael had set a simple table there, with 2 old wooden chairs that looked like they'd lived through decades of stories. He served rice, beans, roast meat. Simple food. But the way he prepared each dish, the care he put into every detail, told me this wasn't just a meal. It was an invitation. We ate in silence at first. The kind of silence that's not uncomfortable, but heavy. Like those heavy clouds before the rain you know is coming. After a while, he spoke. "Do you know what I saw, Lucas? At the hospital, when my heart stopped for 2 minutes." I shook my head. "No. I saw her. My wife." He paused, looking at the horizon. The late afternoon light made his face half golden, half shadowed. She was standing on a dirt road. A dirt road like the ones around here. And she smiled at me. That smile I loved. And do you know what she said? "What?" She said, "Stop crying for me, Raphael. Stop living like you died with me. I went. You stayed. And you need to live for yourself now." His voice trembled a little at the end, and I saw that he was holding back tears. She gave me permission, Lucas. She freed me. Not to forget her, but to stop punishing myself for still being alive. I didn't know what to say, so I just reached out and touched his arm, lightly, a small gesture. But he squeezed my hand hard, as if it were the only safe thing in the whole world. And that's when I realized This wasn't just about him coming back different. It was about him coming back ready. Dinners on the porch became routine. Every day when the sun started to sink, we'd sit there. And every night, the conversation went deeper. He asked me about the city, about what I had left behind. Was there someone? He asked one of those nights, in the city, someone important. I hesitated. But something in the way he looked at me, without judgment, just genuine curiosity, made me speak. There was, kind of like that. Kind of like what? Like someone I thought maybe could be something, but who decided I was too big a risk. Raphael nodded slowly. Risk how? Risk of being discovered. Risk of having to come out. Risk of having to choose between what he wanted and what was easier. And he chose the easier. Yeah, he chose. Silence. Then Raphael spoke quietly. I don't choose the easier, Lucas. Not anymore. And when he said that, he looked me straight in the eyes. And I knew exactly what he meant. It wasn't about the accident. It wasn't about his wife. It was about me. About us. And my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. Things started to change in small ways. Ways that anyone on the outside might not notice. But I noticed. Every single one. When I climbed the ladder to fix the barn roof, Raphael would appear out of nowhere and hold the base. And when I climbed down, his hand would touch my shoulder. Firm. Intentional. Be careful, he would say. But it wasn't just about the ladder. When we worked near each other, he'd let his fingers brush mine as he passed a tool, and he never apologized, never pretended it was an accident. He would just look at me afterward, as if testing, as if he wanted to see if I would pull away. I never pulled away. One night after dinner, we stayed on the porch longer than usual. The sky was full of stars, the kind you only see far from the city. No pollution, no lights, just the whole universe watching from above. Are you afraid of anything, Lucas? He asked suddenly. Afraid of what? Afraid of being happy. Truly. The way you are. I took a deep breath. Every day. He turned to me. We were sitting close. Closer than maybe we should have been. But neither of us moved away. I was too, he said. Afraid that if I accepted who I really am, I'd lose everything. The farm, the respect, her memory. And now? Now I know the only thing I'll really lose is my life. If I keep living in fear. His hand was on the table. I looked at it. Calloused. Strong. And without thinking much, I put mine on top. He didn't move. He just turned his palm up and interlaced his fingers with mine. And we stayed like that. Just holding hands. Under the stars. In the middle of nowhere. And it was the most intimate moment of my life. The next day, I woke with the feeling that something big was about to happen. You know that tingling in the air before a storm? That was it. And when I stepped out of the cabin, I saw the clouds. Dark, heavy, coming fast from the west. Raphael was on the porch, looking at the sky too. It's gonna pour today, he said when he saw me. Does your cabin hold up in a heavy storm? I looked back. The cabin was old. The roof had a few holes I hadn't fixed yet. I don't think so. Then you're staying here today. With me. In the house. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew exactly what that meant. Spending the night there. Inside his house. No excuses. No distance. Raphael noticed my hesitation. The cabin isn't safe in a storm like this, Lucas. And to be honest, he took a step closer. I'm not either. The way he said it. Low, intense, like a confession and an invitation at the same time. I took a deep breath. Okay, I said. And when I said that, he smiled. But it wasn't an easy smile. It was a dangerous smile. The kind someone wears when they know the night is going to change everything. And he was right. Because that night, with the storm coming, with the sky darkening, With the distance between us finally disappearing, I knew there was no turning back. I'd spent weeks trying to keep things professional, trying to convince myself it was just a job, that Raphael was just my boss, that what I felt was just loneliness. But it was a lie. It always had been a lie. Because I wasn't there just for the money, not just for the peace. I was there for him. And now, with the storm approaching, with his invitation echoing in my chest, with fear and hope tangled into something impossible to separate, I knew I was going to stay, no matter what came. Because true love, the kind that makes you feel alive and terrified at the same time, isn't something you choose. It's something that chooses you. And he had chosen me. And I had chosen back. And now, we only had to see what we were going to do with it. The storm arrived exactly like Raphael had predicted. Violent, furious. The kind of storm that makes you feel too small to be alive. I was inside his house now, sitting in the living room, trying to look calm. But my heart was pounding like it knew exactly what was going to happen that night. Raphael lit a kerosene lamp. The power had been out for 20 minutes. The wind shook the windows with a force that seemed like it wanted to tear everything away. "Do you want some coffee?" he asked. His voice was oddly controlled, too calm for the situation. I nodded yes, but couldn't say anything. My throat was tight. I knew that the silence between us wasn't about the storm. It was about everything we'd been avoiding for weeks. Raphael came back with 2 steaming mugs. He sat beside me on the couch, closer than necessary, close enough for me to feel the warmth of his body. The rain hammered the roof. The wind howled outside like a wounded beast. And the 2 of us there, sitting in silence, while the distance between our bodies closed inch by inch. "Lucas," he finally said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I need to tell you something." I looked at him. His green eyes were fixed on mine, intense, full of something I couldn't name. Fear, courage, desperation. "When I had that accident," he continued, "when I was in the hospital, I died for a few seconds." My heart stopped. I held my breath. He had never spoken about it, never gone into details. "And I saw her," he said. "My wife. She was there. I don't know if it was real. I don't know if my mind made it up. But she was there. And do you know what she told me?" I shook my head no. She said, "Raphael, stop using me as your excuse. Stop hiding behind my memory. I'm gone. You're still here. And you're wasting the time you have left." His voice wavered. For the first time since I met him, I saw Rafael Santos completely vulnerable. "I woke up in that hospital bed," he continued, "and for the first time in 2 years I didn't feel guilty for being alive. I felt anger. Anger for having wasted so much time pretending I felt nothing. Pretending it was okay to live alone on this farm. Pretending you didn't exist." My chest tightened. He had just said my name. He had just pulled me into that confession. "Lucas," he said again, this time looking straight into my eyes. "I nearly died. And the only thought racing through that ambulance was, what if I die without ever telling you the truth?" I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was stare at him, at the man who had been my boss, who had been distant, who was now here, breaking down every wall we'd built. "What truth?" I asked. My voice was weak, almost inaudible. "That I didn't hire you just because I needed help on the farm. I hired you because when you got on that bus, when you looked at me for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, and it terrified me." He paused, took a deep breath. "I tried to keep my distance. I tried to treat you like an employee, like someone who would leave at the end of the season. But every day it's harder to pretend I don't want you around, not just to work, but for everything, to wake up with, to sleep next to stay." His words hit me like lightning, direct, raw, too honest to ignore. "And I know this complicates everything," he went on. "I know you could run away from here right now. I know I'm your boss. I know we live in the middle of nowhere where people will talk. I know all of that. But I almost died, Lucas. And I'm not going to waste what time I have left hiding who I am. Or what I feel for you. My heart was exploding. All those weeks. All those nights staring out his window. All those moments wondering if I was crazy. If I was imagining things. Everything made sense now. But there was something else. Something inside me that needed to come out. A truth I'd also been hiding. Raphael, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't come to this farm just because I needed a job. He looked at me, waiting. I came because I was running away, from the city, from someone. I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I was going to say it out loud. To someone who mattered. I had someone. It wasn't public. We hid. Because he was afraid. Afraid of his family, afraid of his friends, afraid of everything. And I accepted it. For 2 years I accepted being his secret. The pain came back. That old ache I'd tried to bury under hard work and the silence of the farm. Until he told me he was going to get married. To a woman. Because it was easier. Because it was safer. Because he didn't have the courage to be who he really was. And he asked me to keep being his secret lover. Even after the wedding. My voice broke. I said no. And I came here. To forget. To never feel that again. To never open my heart to someone who didn't have the courage to be with me. I looked at Raphael. But you're here. Saying all of this. Even knowing it could ruin your reputation. Even knowing people will talk. And I don't know what to do with that. Raphael took my hand. Firm. Warm. Real. You don't have to do anything, he said. You just need to tell me one thing. What do you feel? And there, in that moment, with the storm raging outside, with the weak lamplight flickering between us, with fear and hope waging war inside my chest, I told the truth. I love you, I said. In a way I've never loved anyone. In a way that scares me. Because I know if this goes wrong, I won't survive. Raphael smiled. A small smile. Sweet. Full of relief. Then we're going to have to make it work, he said. And he kissed me. It wasn't a hesitant kiss. Not a kiss of doubt. It was a kiss from someone who had decided. Who had chosen. Who wasn't going to hide anymore. I kissed him back. With everything I'd kept inside. With all the fear. With all the hope. With all the anger at that ex who made me believe love was something to hide. Raphael pulled me close. Our bodies collided. And for the first time in months, I felt whole. As if all the broken pieces inside me had finally found their places. The storm kept raging outside. But inside the house, inside that embrace, there was only peace. We pulled apart, gasping. Faces still close. Eyes locked on each other. Stay with me tonight, Raphael said. Not as an employee, not as a guest, as mine. I couldn't answer with words. I just nodded, yes. He took my hand. We crossed the living room, went up the stairs, and when we reached his bedroom, the room I'd only glimpsed once, Raphael stopped at the door. Are you sure? He asked. I looked at him. At the man who had nearly died, who had come back changed, who had the courage to tell me the truth even with everything to lose. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I answered, and we went in together. The night passed, the storm calmed, and when the first ray of sun came through the window, I woke up in Raphael's arms, his chest rising and falling slowly, his arm around my waist, as if he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. I didn't move. I just stayed there, feeling his warmth, the weight of his arm, the reality of it. I had spent the night with my boss, with the man I'd been silently wanting for weeks, with the only man who'd had the courage to tell me the truth without fear. And for the first time since I ran away from the city, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel fear. I just felt peace. Raphael shifted, opened his eyes slowly, and when he saw me there, he smiled. That smile I had learned to recognize. The smile that said, "You're still here. You didn't leave." "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning," I answered. We stayed there, in silence, just looking at each other, like we were trying to imprint that moment, trying to make sure it was real. Then Raphael got up, put on pants, and looked at me. "I'm going to make coffee," he said. "When I come back, we need to talk." My heart raced. Talk about what? About us? About what happened? About what it meant? I nodded, yes. And he left the room. I stayed there, sitting on his bed, looking around, the simple walls, the window that looked out over the pasture, the photo of his wife that was no longer on the nightstand. She had left, and I had stayed. 10 minutes later, Raphael came back, with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one and sat down beside me on the bed. "Lucas," he said, looking straight at me, "I need to tell you something." My stomach flipped. "Tomorrow," he continued, "I'm going to move your bed in here, into my room." I froze. He wasn't asking, he was stating it, as if it were already decided. "If you don't want that," he said, "if you think this is too fast, if you're scared, tell me now, because if you don't say anything, I'll understand that you want to stay. For real, not just for tonight." I looked at him, at the man who had changed my life in a few weeks, who had given me the courage I didn't know I had. And I said nothing. I just smiled. Raphael smiled back, and in that smile was everything: relief, happiness, fear, hope. "Then it's decided," he said, and I knew, in that moment, that everything had changed. There was no turning back, no distance left, no more pretending. Starting tomorrow, my bed would be in his room, and I would wake up every day next to the man I loved, the man who had died and come back to find me. But there was one thing that still scared me, one question I couldn't stop asking myself. "And the people?" I asked quietly. "The neighbors, the suppliers, everyone who comes here." Raphael took my hand. Firm. "I died for a few seconds, Lucas. And when I came back, I realized one thing. People's opinions are worth nothing compared to the chance to live a real life with someone I love." He squeezed my hand. "If they talk, let them talk. If they stop coming here, I'll find others. But I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm not going to pretend you're just my employee, because you're not." "And what am I?" I asked. Raphael looked at me, in the eyes, with that intensity that disarms me. "You're mine," he said simply, "and I'm yours, and that's all that matters." My chest swelled, with fear, with joy, with a hope so big it hurt. Because for the first time in my life, someone wasn't afraid to claim me. Someone wasn't asking me to be their secret. Someone was saying, "You're mine, and I want everyone to know." And that changed everything. I rested my forehead against his, closed my eyes, and let it sink in. Tomorrow my bed would be here, in his room, and everyone who came into this house would know. There would be no more lies, no more hiding, no more pretending. There would only be us, living, loving, without fear. The storm had passed, but it had left something behind, something new, something real. And as I held Raphael's hand, as I looked into his eyes, as I felt the weight of that decision, I knew there was no going back. And for the first time, I didn't want there to be. I woke up to the sound of furniture being moved. It wasn't a harsh sound, not violent. It was methodical, determined, like everything Raphael did. I opened my eyes. Sunlight came through his bedroom window, our bedroom, because that's what it was going to be now. I got up, put on shorts, walked barefoot to the living room, and there he was, Raphael, carrying my bed, alone, sweating, but with that look on his face, the one I had learned to recognize, the one that said he'd made a decision, and nothing in the world was going to make him change his mind. He saw me standing in the doorway, smiled, That crooked, tired, honest smile of his. "Good morning. Coffee's ready. I'm just finishing here and then we'll eat." I stood there, watching him fit my bed into the corner of the room, beside his. It wasn't a double bed. It was 2 single beds, side by side. But to me, in that moment, it felt like he had built an entire home just for us. "Don't you want help?" He stopped, looked at me, and said something I'll never forget. "No, I want you to see that I'm doing this, that I chose to do this, that it wasn't impulsive, that it wasn't just the storm, that it's real." And it was then that I understood. Raphael wasn't just moving a bed, he was telling me, with gestures, with sweat, with that green look that never left my eyes, that I was no longer the employee, that I was no longer the guy who slept in the little room in the back, that I was his, and he was mine, and that everyone who came into that house would know. I sat at the kitchen table, drank coffee, ate bread with butter, and we didn't talk much, because we didn't need to. There was something in the air, a peace, a certainty, as if the storm from the night before had washed away every doubt, everything that was fear. And when Raphael finished, when he sat down beside me, when he put his hand on my thigh under the table, I knew. There was no turning back. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want there to be. The first days were strange. Not between us. Between us everything was fine. It was even too good. Scarily good. But the world out there. The world out there always finds out. It started with John, the feed supplier. He used to come every week, every Thursday, religiously, until one Thursday he didn't come. Raphael called, left a message. Nothing. The next week I asked, "Do you think he suspected?" Raphael was fixing the fence. Didn't even look up. Suspect what, Lucas? We're not hiding anything, and it was true, we weren't. But it still hurt. Knowing someone had turned their back just because. Just because we existed, just because we loved each other. Raphael put down the pliers, came over to me, held my face with both hands. "Listen, I almost died, literally. And when I came back, when I woke up from that, I saw her. And do you know what she told me?" I shook my head. She said, "Stop wasting your life being afraid of what others will think. Live. Live for real. Because when you're lying in that bed, about to leave, you won't regret having loved. You will regret not having loved enough." He kissed me. Right there. In the middle of the pasture. With the sun burning over our heads. And I understood. Raphael wasn't afraid, because he'd looked death in the face, and come back. And he'd learned the lesson most people only learn too late. That life is short, that love is rare, and that wasting either of them because of gossip, because of glances, because of suppliers who disappear, is the biggest stupid thing anyone can do. But not everyone disappeared. Maria, the neighbor from the next property, she showed up one afternoon, brought homemade cornbread, still warm, put it on the kitchen table, looked at me, looked at Raphael, and said, "I know it's none of my business, but you two look happy, and happiness is far too rare to be wasted." Raphael thanked her. I was left speechless. She left. And when we had the cornbread, when we ate it, I cried. Because until then, I thought the whole world would reject us. I thought we'd have to live hiding, even living together, even sharing the bed. But Maria, with that simple gesture, with those words, she showed me that not everyone is the same, that some people understand, that some people respect, that some people even celebrate, and that, somehow, was more important than any speech. Weeks went by. Farm routine continued. The cattle needed care. The corn needed attention. There was always a piece of fence to fix. But something had changed. Raphael no longer hid. When we worked together, when we passed close to each other, he would rest his hand on my back, pull me in for a quick kiss, smile that way. And at first I looked around, afraid, embarrassed. But he didn't. He didn't care if the new farmhand was watching. He didn't care if the milk truck passed by at that moment. He didn't care. And you know what? Over time, I stopped caring too. There was a day, a Saturday. We were in the corral, sorting cattle for vaccination. The work was hard, dirty, tiring. Raphael was on the other side, guiding a stubborn cow that wouldn't go into the chute. I looked at him, sweaty, focused, beautiful. And when he managed it, when the cow finally went in, he looked at me and smiled. I crossed the corral, through the dust, through the manure, through everything, and I kissed him. There, in front of everyone. The new farmhand got awkward, but said nothing. The vet who was helping chuckled, but also said nothing. And Raphael pulled me closer, put his hand on the back of my neck, and whispered in my ear, "Now you finally understand." And I had understood. That freedom isn't about hiding. It's not about pretending. It's not about living half your life in the shadows. Freedom is about being. Simply being. Without fear. Without shame. Without apologizing. At night, lying in our bed, with Raphael beside me, I thought about everything that had happened. I had come to this farm running away, running from the city, running from rejection, running from myself. I thought I would spend a few months here, save some money, and disappear again. But life had other plans, because I didn't just find a job. I found a home. I found someone who saw me, for real. Not the version I pretended to be, not the mask I wore, but me, raw, imperfect, scared. And even so, he chose me. Raphael turned in bed, pulled me closer, put his arm over my chest. "What are you thinking about?" "About how we got here." He laughed softly. "I almost died, Lucas. That's what happened. I know. But it wasn't just that. It was. I don't know. It was courage. It was you having the courage to stop pretending." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "It wasn't courage, Lucas. It was fear. Fear of dying without having truly lived. Fear of wasting the time I have left hiding who I am. Fear of reaching the end and looking back and seeing only lies." I turned to him. "And now? Are you still afraid?" He held my face, looked me in the eyes. "Now I'm afraid of losing you." That's it. I kissed him. Slowly, gently, with every bit of certainty I had inside me. "You won't lose me, Raphael. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." Months passed. The farm prospered. The cattle were healthy. The harvest had been good. And us, we were okay. Better than okay. Was there gossip? Yes. Always. Did some people stop talking to us? Yes. John never showed up again. And there are some neighbors who look away when we walk by. But you know something? There were also surprises. The town priest, the one everyone thought would condemn us. He greeted Raphael at Mass, shook my hand, and he said, "God is love, boys. It doesn't matter what form it takes." The woman who runs the market, that 70-year-old lady I was sure would judge us, she set aside the best fruits for us and said, "You deserve the best, like everyone else." And Maria, she kept bringing treats, every week, religiously. Because at the end of the day we discover the world isn't black and white. There are bad people. But there are good people too. There are people who will reject you. But there are people who will embrace you. And we choose. We choose who to focus on, who to give attention to, who to allow into our lives. And I chose to focus on the people who stayed, the people who understood, the people who respected. Today, as I write this, Raphael is out in the pasture, tending the cattle. In a little while I'll go out there, I'll help, we'll work side by side, like always. And when the day ends, when the sun sets, when we come back home, we'll take a shower, we'll eat, we'll sit on the porch. And later, we'll lie down, in our bed, in our room, in our house, and we'll sleep. Calm, at peace. Because this is our life now. It's not perfect. It's not a fairy tale. It's not free of judgment, but it's ours. It's real. It's true. And in the end of the day, it's everything we always wanted. If you're reading this, if you're going through something similar, if you're afraid to come out as who you are, I want to tell you one thing. It will hurt. Some people will turn their backs on you. You'll lose people you thought would stay. But you know something? You will also find people. People who accept you. People who love you. People who truly see you. And when you find those people, when you find that place, when you finally allow yourself to exist without masks, without fears, without excuses, you'll understand that everything you lost along the way wasn't worth carrying.